Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg offers a practical, science-backed approach to creating lasting change in your life by starting small, making habits easy, and using the power of emotions to transform your behaviors effortlessly. You are going to learn this whole book in just a few minutes. Let's go! Chapter 1. Introduction. Welcome. Today we're diving into the transformative power of tiny habits, as laid out in BJ Fogg's book, Tiny Habits, the small changes that change everything. Right away, Fogg challenges a common belief that creating significant life changes must be hard. He tells us that this belief isn't true. It's not that we're inherently lazy or flawed, but that the methods we've been taught to change are flawed. Think about it. How many times have you tried to overhaul your diet, fitness routine, or productivity habits, only to burn out a few weeks in? Fogg's approach is refreshingly simple and rooted in science. He says, tiny is mighty, meaning that small incremental changes can snowball into profound transformation. Rather than blaming ourselves when we fail, he urges us to shift the blame to the broken systems we've been following. The good news is that creating positive change doesn't have to feel overwhelming or burdensome. It can actually be fun and enjoyable. So how do we apply this? First, start small. Forget the huge overhauls and focus on tiny, manageable improvements. Next, remember that failure isn't about you, it's about the method. Lastly, approach habit formation with curiosity. Experiment. Tweak things as you go. With the right approach, you'll see how even small changes can make a big impact. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Chapter 2. The Elements of Behavior. Let's move into the heart of Fogg's method, understanding what drives behavior. He breaks it down with a simple formula called BCMAP. This stands for behavior, motivation, ability, and prompt. For any behavior to happen, all three elements need to align. Without a prompt to trigger it or the ability to do it, even high motivation won't lead to action. On the flip side, if a task is simple and you have a strong prompt, you don't need much motivation at all. Think about brushing your teeth. It's easy, you have the ability, there's a clear trigger, waking up or going to bed, and it doesn't require much motivation. It's just automatic. Now compare that to going to the gym. If you need to pack a bag, drive 20 minutes, and face a hard workout, the barriers are much higher, and motivation alone often won't cut it. Fogg's advice? Stop over-relying on motivation. It's unpredictable and fleeting. Instead, simplify your habits, make them easier to do, and design prompts that naturally fit into your routine. For example, if you want to start meditating, tie it to something you already do, like sitting down with your morning coffee. When you align motivation, ability, and prompts, behavior becomes almost effortless. Chapter 3. Motivation. Focus on matching. Motivation is like a wave. It surges and falls unpredictably. Some days you're ready to conquer the world, and other days even getting out of bed feels like a win. This inconsistency makes motivation unreliable as the sole driver of change. Fogg explains that the key is to match habits to your personal aspirations and to your current level of motivation. If your motivation is high, you might tackle a bigger step in your habit journey. But when it's low, keep it tiny. For example, if your goal is to exercise more, don't commit to an hour-long workout every day. Start with just one push-up or a 30-second stretch. The important thing is to make it achievable no matter how you're feeling. When habits align with your values, they stick more easily. Imagine you want to spend more time with your kids. Instead of vague intentions like, be a better parent, turn that into a tiny habit, like giving them a hug each morning. This simple act connects to what matters most to you and makes the habit naturally rewarding. To put this into practice, scale your habits to fit your motivation. Choose ones that reflect your deeper goals, and don't be discouraged by fluctuations in motivation. Plan for them. By matching habits to your life, you set yourself up for long-term success. Chapter 4. Ability. Easy does it. Here's a simple truth. Making habits easy is the secret to making them stick. BJ Fogg explains that simplicity and ease are the most critical factors in habit formation. Why? Because when something feels hard, we are much less likely to do it, especially on days when our motivation is low. He says, simplicity changes behavior, and that's exactly what we need to focus on. Think about a habit you've struggled with. Maybe you want to read more, but you can't find the time. Fogg's advice would be to remove barriers, perhaps by keeping a book on your nightstand or downloading an audiobook to listen to while driving. He encourages us to break habits down into the smallest, simplest steps possible. Want to start flossing? Don't commit to flossing your entire mouth. Just start with one tooth. This approach isn't about taking shortcuts. It's about removing friction and designing habits for success. Leverage your existing routines and resources to make new habits feel natural. Start by identifying the small actions you can take today. If you make it easy, you make it possible. Chapter 5, Prompts, the Power of After. Next, let's talk about prompts. According to Fogg, no habit can start without a trigger to initiate it. He says, no behavior happens without a prompt. In fact, prompts are so important that even the best designed habits will fail if you don't have a reliable way to cue them. One of Fogg's most effective strategies is tying new habits to existing routines. For instance, if you want to start meditating, you could tie it to something you already do daily, like brushing your teeth. After you put down your toothbrush, take a deep breath and meditate for 30 seconds. This is what Fogg calls anchoring, using the power of after to create a natural flow in your day. Prompts work best when they are specific and predictable. Instead of relying on vague reminders like, I'll work out at some point today, link your workout to a consistent event, such as right after your morning coffee. And if a prompt isn't working, don't be afraid to adjust it. Remember, the key is to build your habits into the rhythms of your life. Chapter 6, Emotions Create Habits. Let's dive into a fascinating insight from Fogg. Emotions are the glue that holds habits together. Many people assume that repetition or discipline is what creates lasting habits, but Fogg argues it's actually the positive emotions we associate with the behavior that make it stick. He says, emotions create habits, not repetition. Think about this. When you feel good about something, you're naturally more likely to do it again. That's why celebrating small wins is so powerful. Even something as simple as smiling or saying, I did it, can make your brain associate the habit with success. For example, if you do one push-up, give yourself a mental high five and acknowledge the achievement. The goal is to make the habit feel rewarding, even if it's just a tiny step. Perfection isn't necessary. Progress is. Fogg reminds us to focus on the emotions we feel during and after a habit because that's what cements it into our routines. So, whether you're starting small or scaling up, don't forget to celebrate every victory, no matter how small. Chapter 7, Growing Your Habits from Tiny to Transformative. Here's a question. How does something small grow into something life-changing? BJ Fogg shows us in this chapter that tiny habits are not an end in themselves. They are the seeds for transformation. He writes, start small, but aim big, because tiny habits create momentum. They build confidence and capability as they grow. Over time, the small wins accumulate and naturally expand into larger behaviors that can completely transform your life. Think about learning to play an instrument. You don't start with a symphony. You begin with scales. Over time, as you build skill and confidence, you progress to songs and eventually complex pieces. The same applies to habits. Fogg emphasizes that scaling habits should feel organic. When you're ready, you'll naturally build on the foundation you've created. This approach not only prevents burnout, but also makes the process enjoyable. To apply this, start with the smallest version of a habit. If your goal is to exercise, begin with one push-up or a single stretch. Let the momentum of small wins guide you and focus on consistency, not intensity. Remember, tiny is the seed, but transformation is the tree. Chapter 8, Untangling Bad Habits, a Systematic Solution. Fogg explains that bad habits are stubborn because they're often tied to specific triggers in our environment. He reminds us, the best way to stop a bad habit is to redesign your environment. That's because habits, good or bad, are easier to maintain when they fit the context of our lives. If you want to stop a habit, the first step is to disrupt its triggers. Take snacking on junk food as an example. If the chips are sitting on the counter, they're easy to grab, and the trigger, seeing the bag, is always present. To break the habit, move the chips to a hard-to-reach place or don't buy them at all. Fogg also suggests shrinking the behavior or replacing it with something positive. Instead of eating chips, you might replace the habit with reaching for fruit. Understanding why a bad habit exists is key. Maybe you snack because you're bored or stressed. Addressing that root cause will help you replace the negative behavior with something healthier. To implement this, identify the triggers for your bad habits. Make those behaviors harder to execute by adding friction, and fill the void with positive alternatives. Chapter 9: How We Change Together. Change, as BJ Fogg explains, doesn't have to be a solo journey. In this chapter, he emphasizes the power of community, saying, change is easier when you do it together. Whether it's sharing your success or working toward a goal with someone else, collaboration can supercharge your progress. Social support not only boosts accountability, but also creates a sense of shared purpose. Think about how gyms or study groups work. When you're surrounded by others pursuing the same goal, it's easier to stay motivated and consistent. Fogg explains that sharing success stories isn't just about celebrating yourself. It inspires others and reinforces your own progress. This ripple effect of positivity can strengthen relationships and build a supportive network. To put this into action, involve a friend or family member in your habit-building journey. Share your wins, no matter how small, to inspire those around you. And find an accountability partner to keep you on track. When we support and encourage each other, we create lasting change together. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Chapter 10: The Small Changes That Change Everything. Finally, Fogg ties everything together by showing us how tiny habits lead to profound transformation over time. He writes, "Big changes start small because small, consistent actions have a compounding effect. Over weeks, months, and years, the small wins add up to something truly remarkable. Think of it like saving money. A single dollar saved may not seem like much, but over time, it grows into a substantial amount. Similarly, tiny habits, done consistently, can reshape your identity and transform your life. This approach is sustainable because it focuses on progress rather than perfection. Fogg encourages us to embrace simplicity and trust the process. The takeaway here is simple. Commit to small changes, not dramatic overhauls. Focus on steady, incremental progress. Trust that the tiny steps you take today will compound into big results over time. By cultivating tiny habits, you're creating a foundation for lasting, meaningful transformation.